July 28, 1942. The Kremlin map room, Moscow. The clack, clack, clack of a lone teletype machine in the corridor outside beat like an anxious heart. Inside the reinforced chamber, heavy with the scent of stale tobacco and sweat, Joseph Stalin stood before the enormous situation map of the Eastern Front. Heat haze shimmered over the city outside the thick windows, but in here the air was chilled by dread. His knuckles were white around an unlit pipe. The red line, the Soviet front, had been torn open like a gut wound. From Voronezh to Rostov, German panzer spearheads drove eastward in bold black arrows, and now here, at this critical juncture, the map showed a nightmare crystallizing. A single, thick black arrow, marked with the Gothic script of 6th Army, pointed directly at Stalingrad. Not just at the city, through it, to the wide blue ribbon of the Volga. And Stalin knew, with a certainty that turned his stomach to ice, if the Volga fell, the Caucasus oil fields would be severed, and the war would be lost. Around him, his generals stood in a semicircle of silent apprehension. General Georgy Zhukov, his face still bearing the fatigue of the Leningrad front, studied the map with a tactician's cold eye. But the slight, almost imperceptible tightening of his jaw betrayed him. Marshal Alexander Vasylyevsky, chief of the general staff, shifted his weight quietly, the rustle of his uniform the only sign of the tension coiling beneath his professional exterior. A junior officer by the door held a stack of dispatches, his face pale as he tried to mute the crackle of the field radio earpiece dangling from his belt. The reports were a cascade of disaster. The 62nd Army shattered at the Don Bends, defensive lines abandoned not in order but in panic, a retreat dissolving into something uglier, a rout. The familiar, terrifying rhythm of 1941 was playing again, the deep German thrusts, the encirclements, the surrender of entire Soviet armies. Everyone in the room could hear the echo. Stalin turned slowly from the map. His face, usually an inscrutable mask of control, was pale with a fury that burned colder than anger. It was the fury of a man staring into the abyss about to swallow his nation and his legacy. "They are running," he stated, his voice a low growl that cut through the hum of the electric fans. It wasn't a question. From Rostov, from the Don, they abandoned their motherland to the fascists without orders, without fighting. He let the accusation hang, his dark eyes moving from Zhukov to Vasylyevsky, imprinting the blame. They leave their weapons as gifts for Hitler. They make a highway for the enemy to our heart. He stepped forward, planting both hands on the map table, looming over the city that bore his name, as if his shadow could shield it. "This city," he hissed, fingers stabbing at the Stalingrad dot. "If it falls, the country falls. The spine of the army breaks. There will be no more Russia, only a German slave colony." He paused, letting the apocalyptic visions suffocate the room. Then his voice dropped to a deadly calm. "This retreat, this cowardice, ends today." He gestured sharply to Vasylyevsky, the motion slicing the air. "The order, read it." Vasylyevsky, his expression now a perfect blank slate, picked up a single typed page. It was Directive number 227. The paper rattled faintly in his grip as he began. "The enemy throws new forces to the front, disregarding heavy losses. The population of our country, who love and respect the Red Army, begin to be disappointed in it." The language was brutally frank, shaming, unprecedented. Then came the core, the sentence that would be etched in fire and blood. "Not a step back." Such must now be our main slogan. The slogan hung in the air, absolute and terrifying, but it was the operational details that followed, the mechanical implementation that turned words into a machine of terror. Vasylyevsky continued, his voice now a flat administrative monotone.
To implement this slogan, we must establish within each army 3 to 5 well-armed barrier detachments and place them directly behind unstable divisions. A physical shock went through the room. Barrier detachments, zabrado triadi. Every man present understood these troops wouldn't face the Germans. Their barrels would point west toward their own retreating lines. Zhukov broke the silence, his gravelly voice with the strain of what he was about to say. Comrade Stalin, the men are at their limit. They have retreated hundreds of kilometers. They are short on shells, food, and often any coherent command. To place NKVD troops behind them with orders to... He couldn't say it. The image was too stark. Stalin cut him off, his composure snapping. They lack discipline. They lack the will to defend the soil of their ancestors. He slammed his palm on the table, making water glasses tremble. The motherland gives them a rifle, a cause, and they throw it down and run like rabbits? No more. He outlined the rest with chilling precision. Commanders permitting retreat would be stripped of rank and sent to penal battalions, Staffmats, expendable units thrown at minefields or impregnable strongpoints. The calculus was engineered to paralyze every level, from the private in his foxhole to the general in his command post. The message was identical. The enemy might be in front, but certain death waited behind. If you were in that room, your mind would be racing. The retreat to the Volga hadn't been mere cowardice, it was often the only logical response to overwhelming German blitzkrieg tactics. Now, that pressure valve was welded shut. Stalin was creating a brutal physics. The immense force of the German advance would meet the immovable object of the blocking detachments. Something, someone, would be pulverized in between. Stalin watched their faces, reading the horror and doubt. "You think this is cruelty," he said, his tone shifting to one of icy, pragmatic reason. "I tell you it is the only surgery that will save the patient. A soldier who cannot retreat must dig his heels into the earth. He must fight. He will find a courage in his belly he never knew because he has no other choice. The Volga is at his back. His home is at his back. There is no behind anymore. There is only here." The meeting ended. The order was to be distributed immediately to all fronts, with utmost priority to Stalingrad. As the generals filed out into the Moscow afternoon, the weight of the directive settled on their shoulders like a physical yoke. Outside, the sun was bright, but each man carried a private gathering storm. The directive shot down the chain of command like a lightning bolt, electrifying and burning everything it touched. At the 62nd Army's fragile headquarters in a bunker east of the Volga, General Vasily Chuikov, a man built like a fireplug with a temper to match, received the text. He read it, then read it again, his lips moving silently over the words, "barrier detachment." He cursed under his breath, not at the order, but at the situation that demanded it. His army was a bleeding, confused mass. Units were skeletons of their former selves. Commands overlapped. The front line was a fiction. He needed a wall. Order number 227, for all its monstrousness, was the only cement left. Days later, west of the Volga, near the shattered village of Kotluban, theory became a personal hell for men like Sergeant Nikolai Petrov, a 32-year-old former literature teacher from Leningrad. His rifle company had just endured 12 hours of relentless artillery pounding and strafing runs from German Messerschmitts. Their trenches were gone, merged with the cratered earth. When the German infantry advanced behind a screen of smoke, the order came down their shattered line, "Pull back to the ravine." It wasn't panic, it was shattered instinct, the animal need to survive. Petrov, his ears ringing, his uniform crusted with dirt and another man's blood, helped a wounded comrade stumble back through the churned soil. As they reached the edge of the ravine, they froze. Ahead stood not reinforcements, but a line of soldiers from the 10th NKVD Rifle Division. Their uniforms were distinct, cleaner. Their PPSH-41 submachine guns were not slung, but held ready, aimed at chest height. "Halt! Return to your positions, by order of the Stavka and Comrade Stalin." The NKVD lieutenant's voice was flat, empty. Our positions are craters, Petrov shouted back. We have no anti-tank guns. The Germans have panzers. The NKVD officer didn't blink. He simply gestured with his weapon barrel back towards the thunderous horizon. Your position is where you stop the fascist. Go back, or you will be shot for cowardice in the face of the enemy. The silence that followed was filled with the distant crump of shells and the high whine of fear in Petrov's ears. He looked at the NKVD muzzles, then back at the smoke where the enemy waited. The geometry of his world had just been violently simplified. Gently, he lowered his friend to the ground. Then he turned. He trudged back towards the hellfire, picking up a Mosin Nagant rifle from a still form in the dirt. He would become one of the most tenacious defenders in the northern factory district, not because of sudden heroism, but because every other path had been removed. Across the collapsing front, variations of this scene played out.